Okay, without taking up any more time, I will turn to the next speaker, Brian Becker. Brian also needs very little introduction in the sense, and you will have seen one of his videos on the present situation, which has really got an enormous number of views. I think it was with Amy Goodman, but I just remember Brian in it. Anyway, Brian is the national coordinator of the Answer Coalition and founder and central organizer of a founder and a central organizer of the Party of Liberation and Socialism. So Brian, please go ahead.
Thank you, Rania, and thank you to everyone. Because time is short, I'm gonna go briefly instead of extensively, and I appreciate all the other comments from the other speakers. Part of the issue here, of course, is where you are in the world. We are in the United States, and in the United States, we have a special obligation to be able to demonstrate persuasively with facts, with in persuasive arguments that it is in fact the United States and NATO that created this crisis, that when Russia announced that they had red lines at the end of December and amassed troops along Ukraine's border on the east and on the north, in other words, when there was a plan A, a negotiated settlement, and a plan B, the threat of military action, it would have been very easy for the United States to say yes, instead of saying no to Russia's legitimate demands that Ukraine, with a 1,200-mile border with Russia, not be the staging ground for advanced missiles, conventional and nuclear missiles, whose flight time to Russian targets would be 5 or 6 minutes. And that this comes just 2.5 years after the US canceled the Gorbachev-Reagan INF Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Range Treaty, that banned those kind of weapons, having lifted the ban and having Ukraine become a de facto member of NATO, not necessarily a formal member, and the placement of advanced weapons that would begin now or has already begun, but would continue and continue. The US could easily recognize that Russia's demands were legitimate. Make Ukraine neutral, say yes to that, and guarantee that advanced weapons like these would not be placed in Ukraine. But instead, the US not only said no, and not only said no, 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 it also, at the same time, as we know now from declassified or classified documents that have been leaked and reported on by the Washington Post, that the US exponentially increased arms shipments of advanced weapons into Ukraine starting in early December 2021. So they said no to the negotiations. And not only did they say no, they escalated the fear that Russia would have because they were indeed placing these weapons. Now, in America, we have to point out to the people of the United States that the government that invades Ukraine, invaded Vietnam, invaded Korea, all the other invasions, the endless invasions, the wars that took millions of lives, is now crying crocodile tears for Ukrainians, when there's been no one's been held to account for all of these endless war crimes by American imperialism. Russian opera singers that are being told, you must denounce your government or else, and they are being replaced. No American opera singer was told, denounce George W. Bush for the invasion of Iraq, or Obama for the bombing of Libya, or else you're out of your job. This kind of hysteria in America requires us as anti-imperialists to focus on the role of the United States and imperialists. For the comrades in Russia, for the comrades in Ukraine, there are different tasks, undoubtedly. And it's not that these are completely separate tasks, they are overlapping tasks. I mean, we as American socialists care about what socialists and Marxists in Russia are thinking. We care about what anti-imperialists are thinking. We recognize that the dissolution of the Soviet Union by Boris Yeltsin and the leader of the then Republic of Ukraine illegally in December 1991, the illegal dissolution of the Soviet Union was a great historic tragedy for Ukrainians, for Russians, and for anti-imperialists and working class socialists globally. And here we are after 30 years of bourgeois rule in both countries, Ukrainians and Russians who fought together to defeat fascism, who fought together and worked together and shared the cooperation and benefits of socialism, are now killing each other. So if you're a Russian or if you're a Ukrainian and you are a Marxist and a socialist and see that the current government in Russia has no forward-looking vision for the world, no a better world is possible vision of the world, that yes, it has legitimate concerns about Russia's national security, and it doesn't want to be treated as a diminished neo-colonial state in spite of the power and size of Russia. Those are understandable from the point of view of the Russian government, even a bourgeois government. Those are legitimate issues, very legitimate and national interests. But we are socialists, we are Marxists, and we are promoting the unity of the people against imperialism, and not happy to see the resort of military operations that are not explained, that cannot really contribute and build solidarity between the peoples, between the two republics, and of course, offers no vision for a different world. So we're in different places, we have different tasks, they do overlap. I do want to say that it was perplexing for us as well that the Russian government and the Russian media consistently denied right up until the very moment of the military operation that Russia had any intention of moving in. Even the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman laughed about it. She said, "Oh, please tell us when the Russian invasion of Ukraine will be so I can schedule my vacation plans." I mean, this had the impact of politically unpreparing the population, not only in Russia, but anti-imperialists in Europe, anti-NATO activists in Europe and globally for what was coming. There was no political preparation, as if politics doesn't matter, as if consciousness doesn't matter, when of course, we believe as socialists that the consciousness, the intentionality of the masses of people is the most decisive element in world politics and can't be diminished. So we don't know yet why there was a sudden decision or a seemingly sudden decision to change tack and to actually militarily intervene in Ukraine. We don't know. I think more will be learned as we go forward about that. Certainly, I think what Putin did, what the Russian government did, was violate a basic tenet of what had been Soviet foreign policy, which was don't let the imperialists unite against us. Don't let all of the imperialists unite against us. When you think of the 1930s and the government in the Soviet Union sought a collective security agreement with Britain and France and perhaps the United States against fascism, and when it was rejected, decided to have a non-aggression pact with Germany, there was a decision made, we won't let the imperialists unite against us. And when the Germans invaded, the Soviets formed an alliance with the British and the Americans. Putin's actions being conducted the way they have has successfully united the imperialists against Russia. So from a tactical point of view, it seems to be a very dramatic shift in Russian thinking, in Russian foreign policy thinking, strengthening the hand of imperialism. But obviously the Russians have calculated, this is what I believe anyway, that war was coming, that if you read Putin's speeches, especially the way he talked about the non-aggression pact with Germany, or sort of referred to it, that it was appeasement and that it made the country unprepared for the coming invasion of Germany and millions died unnecessarily. One must come to the conclusion, if he is sincere, that Putin or some section of his establishment concluded war is actually coming one way or the other. And instead of passively waiting, we're going to take the first step. We're going to take territory, not just the eastern part of Ukraine, but all of it in order to secure Russia's perspective going forward. If that's the case, we don't know whether it's a wise or unwise political move. It does have the at least momentary impact of weakening anti-imperialism and weakening the anti-NATO position of people in Europe. And if you think European public opinion doesn't matter, that too would be a significant shift in Russian or earlier Soviet foreign policy. Again, I'll conclude with this. Please look at the WikiLeaks document from 2008 that shows that American officials realized when they said at the Bucharest summit that NATO would include Georgia and Ukraine, that it was likely to incite a civil war in Ukraine. And yet in 2014, with the coup d'etat against the Yanukovych government, ending the de facto neutrality of Ukraine, clearly the American government decided, knowing what it knew, that it promoted civil war in Ukraine, and to what end? Only to provide a pretext or a justification for the full entrance of NATO into Ukraine. Thus, again, and I'll conclude on this, we blame US imperialism in NATO for deliberately, recklessly creating a crisis that could easily escalate, especially as public opinion is shifting here, demanding a no-fly zone, that if opportunist politicians gave into that sentiment, which they helped create, along with the mass media, we could be on the verge of a global conflict. This is how big wars start, and anti-imperialists have to address a number of issues, as do socialists, about the need for international solidarity against imperialism, locating imperialism as the primary enemy. And by imperialism, I mean US imperialism and its military alliance in NATO. But we have to also have tactics that show that we have a vision of the future, that we're not camp followers of this or that government in a multipolar or emerging multipolar world, but we have our own independent, working class, internationalist, and socialist perspective, the one that can really win the workers of the world over to a perspective of real peace. Thank you.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.